Hello and welcome to episode 32 of the NF Show, NF Magazine's official video podcast. I'm your host for this week, Evan Campbell. With me, as always, is the ever lovely Noah Ward.
Hi there, everybody. Welcome to the show.
Yes, and we have quite the show for everyone out there. There's been a lot happening in Nintendo Land, and not the game, but just the universe in general. And a lot of it probably Nintendo didn't want to be out in the world just yet. Yes, we'll be talking a lot about the Super Smash Bros. For 3DS and Wii U leak that confirmed, or possibly confirmed, I think it's pretty legit now, Nintendo taking down videos of characters like Shulk and Bowser Jr. and many more. But that wasn't the only game that was leaked last week. No, one game that we really enjoyed from last year for 3DS, even though we don't know if it's coming, was Resident Evil Revelations 2.
Yes.
So we'll be talking about that a little bit as well. We have new game impressions for Siesta Fiesta and Kirby Triple Deluxe, both on 3DS. And then finally, we'll finish up this episode with your fantastic feedback. So a packed show. We're in the kind of doldrums of summer, but things are picking up. And speaking about things picking up, we have an exciting announcement for NF Magazine. Lucas Thomas let us know that there could possibly be a new Super Smash Bros. Double-sided poster coming in issue 12 of NF Magazine if we can get 100 or more new subscribers by the end of September. So these details over on the NF Magazine Kickstarter page as well as nfmagazine.com. And all we need to do is get 100 new subscribers through a link that's posted once again on those two websites, and there will be a double-sided Super Smash Bros. Poster in issue 12 of the magazine. And if you're wondering how much it costs, there's actually a really cool sale going on. You can get a half-year subscription, which will include, I believe it is, issue 11, 12, and 13 for only $10. So that's a great way to get the magazine to come right to your doorstep or right in your mailbox.
It's really cool, and I honestly think this is a very attainable goal for us to get just another 100 subscriptions, and then we all get a really awesome double-sided poster of Smash Brothers art. I am definitely down. I hope that people out there listening to the show or watching the show will become new subscribers. If you haven't jumped on yet, be sure to go to the website and check it out.
Yeah, definitely. And if this is something where you might just be thinking, what do I get out of this? Everyone will get the new Super Smash Bros. Double-sided poster. And I think the plan is right now for one side of it to be all of the character reveals once we know everyone that's going to be in the game. And then on the other side, more original art from the NF Magazine staff, something similar to the Mario Kart 8 poster that came a couple of issues ago. So that's something to look forward to. Something that we unfortunately don't get to look forward to on Wii U anymore, though, is the Assassin's Creed franchise. According to Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot, sorry, I took French in high school too, so it's even more pathetic, Noah, that I can't pronounce that. But he said that Wii U owners just don't purchase the franchise. He was talking to, I believe it was Game Informer last week, and said it's very simple. What we see is that Nintendo customers don't buy Assassin's Creed. Last year it sold in very small numbers. What we see is that they are very interested in the Just Dance franchise, very interested by other kinds of games. So what we are trying to do is focus more on the types of games that they are interested in. Watch Dogs is coming to Wii U, but it will only be the only mature game we publish on the system.
Well, this just kind of follows in the footsteps of other things that we've heard. We were hoping that Ubisoft, as kind of the last major supporting third-party publisher and developer, would throw us a bone, but with the delay of Rayman and now this, it kind of says the cards are on the table. And unless things change dramatically with the release of Smash Brothers later this year, and who knows, maybe Splatoon and the Amiibo figurines, maybe they'll have a big boost for Wii U. But for now, Nintendo Wii U is definitely going to be a home for all of Nintendo's first and second party awesome games, which are usually major reasons to buy a system anyways. There are definitely plenty of system sellers to choose from in a variety of genres. But when you're considering outlaying a bunch of cash for a video game console, it does feel comforting to have options from other third-party publishers and developers, and I feel that it kind of makes the Wii U system more of a system for hardcore Nintendo fans or people who are paying attention enough to the video game media, whether it's fan-based or professional, to know, oh, there's a really great first-party game that you can't get anywhere else. Now, do you have enough reasons to buy a Wii U? We already have so many great exclusives. Can we get more people onto the Wii U bus? Or is this bus coming to a stop here in the next year or two?
Yeah, and third party support is something that we've obviously talked about a lot here on the NF show, and I sadly don't find this surprising, and I personally just I don't think we're going to see third party support come back or be resurrected for the Wii U. I know that there was talks of Iwata being like, "Oh, if we can get numbers up, third parties will have to come back." But as we saw last year, the 3DS was the best-selling hardware in the United States or in North America, and we don't see third parties rushing to get games out this year. And then you just have the whole predicament of development. It takes time to develop software. It can take a year or 2 years, so it's not something that a light switch can magically be flipped on. And I think this just Nintendo has had a problem, I would say, Noah, since the GameCube era, where it really, I believe, by Microsoft and Sony got pigeonholed into a kiddie system where people don't want to play, whether you want to call them mature games or not, but games that are geared, I guess, toward an older audience or how people describe them as gritty games. Nintendo had a problem then, and I think that image has only gotten worse, and I think it's at a low point right now. So I really just I think it's going to take Nintendo kind of filling in some of those holes and maybe publishing content. Maybe things like Bayonetta and Devil's Third are a step in the right direction. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what's kind of cool is for every news story that we hear that is like this, there's still something else out there that's coming that hopefully piques the interest of a lot of people out there. I'm definitely interested in both the Bayonetta 1 and 2 doubleheader as well as Devil's Third. And that's really exciting because those games are what I would classify as mature games. Maybe not necessarily in terms of these are War and Peace games, but they are for grown-up people just
Yes.
by virtue of the content. And it's really exciting because these are exclusives. And whether or not we get Assassin's Creed or other titles, which I'm sure are going to pop up as the year goes on, there's still stuff that we have coming just to us that I'm hoping is really fun and really well made. But signs are good.
Yeah. Well, speaking about things popping up, one of the games that is a mature rated game, or was at least with the original title, was Resident Evil Revelations. And there was a leak for Resident Evil Revelations 2 that actually appeared on the Xbox.com website. So we only know that it's for the Xbox 360 so far. But there are thoughts that maybe it could come to the Wii U since the original did, or possibly the 3DS, where Resident Evil Revelations actually debuted before it went on to console and PC release. So I was really excited, and I'm guessing you were as well, Noah, just because we enjoyed that game so much last year. Or was it 2012? I think it was 2012 actually, which is crazy to believe it's been
Yeah,
that quickly.
it's surprising that it was that long ago, but it was one of the system sellers for 3DS for me that initially got me to jump on the train. And it was a great Resident Evil game. I really enjoyed it a lot. I played through all of it. I got the giant control Circle Pad Pro Plus whatever for it, and then ended up not using it. So that was a total waste of money. The 3DS had fine controls as it was, but it was a great, solid Resident Evil game that was in the vein of Resident Evil 4. Not so much in the vein of Resident Evil 5 or 6, but it was really good. And to hear that Capcom liked it enough and felt that it did well enough to make another title in this spin-off side story is great news. I didn't have quite this same reaction when there was a sequel to Resident Evil Chronicles. Wasn't that the name of the Wii
Yeah,
games? Yeah,
that was a light rail shooter.
shooter. Yeah, they were on-rail shooter games, which is not a traditional Resident Evil game. And it was cool to get those exclusively at first on Wii, but they weren't traditional Resident Evil games. This one, Revelations, was. It was a lot of fun, and I hope that it comes to a Nintendo platform since it did sell pretty darn well on 3DS.
Yeah, I'm. This is weird. I mean, obviously, I hope it comes to both systems, but I feel like I would be annoyed if it didn't come to the 3DS because it was cool having just this very console-like experience with the 3D graphics. And I would say Revelations is probably I'd go up there with Kid Icarus as one of the best-looking games for the systems.
Oh yeah.
So I just really hope it comes to the 3DS at the very least because our excitement could quickly turn to kind of a sourness. I feel like where we're just like Capcom, what? This isn't fair to us or whatever else. So everyone, keep your fingers crossed that we'll get word of it coming to 3DS or Wii U or both here in the upcoming future. But before we get into what we're playing, I wanted to do, we had a Twitter question, and it'd be fun to have possibly a short Twitter question of the week each week. You can reach Noah at This Is Noah. I'm at Evan Campbell, and finally, the NF Magazine Twitter account is at NF Magazine. And we had a Twitter question from Alex O, speaking of the 3DS, who said, should I spring for a 3DS now, or would it be wise to wait for a potential price drop revision? Thank you.
That's an interesting question, Alex. I, if you can manage to wait a couple more months until Smash comes out, I would probably say, well, I guess it's a few months. It feels like it's not that far away, that it's finally around the corner. If you can manage to wait until then, you could have just a really fantastic 3DS game because Smash and 3DS, by all accounts, is really well designed, fun to play. Controls are not an issue in that game. And then there's years of all these other great games. But you could get Smash potentially at a discount if they do that bundled with 3DS. You could get a cool limited edition 3DS if it's announced for your country. That is, I don't know. I think I'd wait but save up money to buy all of the awesome titles that have already come out, so you can just have this massive, what's an appropriate word, explosion of games to go through in your 3DS because there are so many of them, as we've talked about in previous episodes with our Elite Eight list. What do you think, Evan?
Yeah, this is like a tough one. I think we'd need a little bit more information, but if you have other consoles, if you have games right now that you could be playing or a backlog, I would also advise you to wait as we come up on the holiday season. I mean, this is going to be the 3DS's, what, fourth holiday season?
Yeah.
So there are going to be, I believe, just a ton of bundles. You're going to see price. I don't know if you'll see like a permanent price drop, but you're going to see really good deals as we get closer and closer to Christmas. And like Noah said, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the 3DS XL Super Smash Brothers bundle announced here for North America, possibly other bundles. If you're into Pokemon, I bet there will be some kind of Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire bundle coming on. I bet the 2DS you're going to be able to find it. I mean, you're right now. Every once in a while, you can find it for $100 at the Targets and the Best Buys. I wouldn't be surprised if that goes even lower. So, if you're dying though for content, I don't think you can go wrong at this point buying a 3DS. You're not only going to find a lot of retail games probably for cheap, but there's so many great eShop games to
Yeah.
pick up on the system. But if you can wait, I think you're going to be able to snag it for a really great price. As for the revision, it's getting less and less likely as we get closer to the holiday season. You would think you'd hear something about it, but I think you've got three choices right now, or you may only have two. I don't know if you can buy the original 3DS that much. I'm sure you could possibly find it on Amazon or eBay, but I just don't think you can go wrong either way with this system. Well, with that, let's get into what we're playing. Noah, I'm very excited to hear obviously more about Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, your up and down roller coaster ride with that game, but I'd also, before that, possibly like to hear about Kirby Triple Deluxe because I've heard so many great things about that game, and I know that you were a big fan of Kirby Epic Yarn, but how is that love translating into a more traditional Kirby platformer for the 3DS?
It's pretty good. I have only very early preliminary impressions so far, but I'll have more in-depth impressions next week. I also was a really huge fan of Kirby Mass Attack, which that was a DS game, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's great. It was stylus based. But that wasn't very traditional either, was it?
I would say it was more of a traditional Kirby game than Kirby's Epic Yarn was. But either way, I really liked both of those. And there's some other Kirby games in the past that I kind of liked, but those two are really my big favorites. And what I liked about both of those games right off the bat is they just drew me in within the first level or two. I've played a couple levels so far, and it looks pretty. It has a nice little opening cinema. The jumping in and out of the background so far is done by triggering an element, so it's not on command. You jump to a spot and then you go into the background, and then you jump to another spot and you come back out. You jump into a star essentially, and it feels easy. The levels are kind of lengthy, and the hypernova ability is pretty cool. It hasn't quite grabbed me yet, but it is so early that it is not a foregone conclusion that it won't grow on me. And everything that I've read about this game has been nothing but glowing or positive. Even reviews that said, it's a good Kirby game, were still on the positive side. It wasn't there. I don't think I saw anything that was purely, this is completely average. Don't get this unless you've been following Kirby for years or you want a really easy game. Definitely a positive spin in everything I read, so I'm excited to see how it goes in later levels, but it hasn't quite grabbed me yet.
Well, yeah, I'll be really curious because, like you said, I feel like the reviews for Kirby games in general are always pretty positive. I think the one knock against obviously is always the difficulty. But I just feel like I've heard so much positive word of mouth with Kirby Triple Deluxe, more so than other Kirby games. I think the last like purely traditional one was for the Wii a couple of years ago, and I'm blanking on what the name of that one was.
It was Return to Dreamland, I think.
Return to Dreamland. Okay, so yeah, and I feel like I've heard so much more positivity about this game, so I'm excited to hear you playing it. And I'm guessing if you're that early on, you haven't been able to play any of the mini games that we've talked about in the past with Dawn that were kind of separated and sold in Japan at least as eShop titles.
Yeah, those are actually available right from the main menu screen, and I will have impressions on those next week as well. I guess the one thing that's making this more of a traditional Kirby game than ever before is that whoever you inhale, you can push down on a button and then you become that monster. You get that monster's abilities. And that's something that I really like is going through early levels. There are lots and lots of different enemies that you run into. And I found one enemy, one of the very first ones that I absorbed and absorbed those powers. I thought, wow, this enemy is great. I'm just going to keep using that one, keep using that one. It's like, oh, do I want to give that up and try this enemy? Or how about this enemy? I'm like, nope, 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 nope. But there's still many more surprises I think to come because I have so many other enemies to inhale and absorb their powers and see what they're like. And I like that experimental vibe to Kirby games, regardless of how easy the platforming and the level design is, that you can go through it and go about it in different ways with different abilities is kind of cool.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, talking platformers, what about one of my favorite Wii U platformers? How is your experience ongoing with Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze?
I think I'm about two-thirds of the way through the second world, so I haven't gotten to the third world, which I remember hearing last week. That's when things really start to get exciting from a presentation perspective. I am still running into issues, and they're not. I don't think that I've found as many gotcha type design decisions. They have been there, and they have killed me, and I get really angry when that happens. But then I start over. And one of the stages that really impressed me was Horn Top Hop, just because throughout the level there are enemies blowing on horns, or there are platforms that raise and drop all to the beat of the music once you actually encounter them, or the actual main instrument changes from, I think it's an accordion, to a really soft xylophone when you start jumping on leaves that are falling from the trees, and it's really cool to have things dynamically change as you go through it. It's just the game is just one gigantic bottomless pit, which drives me nuts because that's how I'm dying over and over and over. Is I'm not quite I haven't quite learned yet how long the tumble forward move is, or if I start running, how long is it going to be before he stops running, because everything has a time limit and a distance limit to it. and it can be so infuriating. I feel like much of the levels so far, whether you're doing a mine cart or you're running around on an animal or just running around as Donkey Kong, everything's all about going to the very tip of the edge and jumping at the last second. It's all about jumping at the last second, running to the very edge of things, or you fall in the pit. And sometimes when you're forced to run through things, you're supposed to make the rhino charge forward in order to burst through blocks. It can be really frustrating trying to juggle that, know when the rhino is going to stop running, and then wait until the very last second before a pit to jump in order to make it across the pit. And it's just like, I'm glad your QA developers have this down like a science, but these are not the types of level designs that should be happening in the first two worlds. It's driving me nuts. It makes me really angry, but I'm getting through it, and I'm going to try to get through it only on the principle that I purchased it and I spent a decent chunk of money on it, and it's that price that I paid that's making me want to get through it more than anything, not because I really want to see anything else, because it just keeps making me so mad, but I'm going to try to get through as much of it as I can before I snap. And I should not play before the podcast because it puts me in a really bad mood, which I always say. So I will try not to do that next time.
Yeah, and to kind of go along with your point, I would say there's two things. I think one of them is I do think that Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze feels like it's almost picking up where Returns left off. Like they assume you should have played that, and that's probably not necessarily the right design philosophy. So that helped for me because I had played all of Returns and jumped into that. So I kind of had an idea for what was going on. And then number two, Donkey Kong, more than almost any other platformer I feel like I've played at least in the last few years, has such different physics and a different feel than most platformers. He doesn't stop on a dime. He slides along things. His jump arc's pretty different. He has a weightiness to him that's at odds, especially I think with Mario and Rayman, which are two of the biggest platformers out there. So I think those kind of things are kind of coalescing together and giving you a lot of trouble, and I can definitely understand where that's coming from, and it's definitely a tough game. It is a really tough game.
But here's two design decisions that I think are stupid. Donkey Kong has gigantic arms, gigantic hands, and if you jump for a platform, he won't grab onto it and catch it like Mario can do, like Rayman can do. Donkey Kong, who has gigantic hands, will not grab onto a platform before he falls into a pit trap. And yet, if he walks forward into a wall or a brick, he'll bump into it. He won't just kind of keep moving. He bumps into it and he does an animation back, which is a nice detail that's kind of unnecessary, but then slows things down and makes things harder. So I feel like all these little kinds of details, deliberate things that aren't included, deliberate things that are included, just conspire against the player. And my thought tonight as I was playing it was, I really, really, really hope that Retro's next game is not a Donkey Kong game, because at this point I will definitely not be buying it. And that means that I'll be waiting 8 years probably before they move on from this freaking franchise. But here we are.
One tip I will give, and I don't know, you may already know this or not, but to help on any long jumps across chasms, is you can actually roll off a ledge as you're going across from left to right. You can roll off and then jump as you're off the actual land and kind of in the air, jump out of that to do a super long jump. So if you're not trying to
No idea. I hadn't figured that out because I thought rolls equal death off of ledges.
So no, so if you're not worried about like pinpointing onto the next thing you're jumping and it's just a long death or a long death, there are a lot of long deaths. If you're just worried about trying to make the jump and not worried about where you land, I would recommend doing that. And that way you don't have to worry about as much precision. I mean, you'll have to get that down, obviously, the right thing. But yeah, you can roll off a ledge and halfway through break out of that animation and jump to kind of do like, I guess the equivalency of that would be Mario's kind of crouch and then jump in any of the 3D Marios. So hopefully that could help a little bit.
See, that's what I like about the show, listeners and watchers, is that it kind of turns into this counselor's corner experience where Evan's here coaching me through my inadequacies in Donkey Kong Country, and we all benefit from it, which is really cool. So thank you, Evan.
Well, I wish we could all benefit. This is why I wish the Wii U had Twitch streaming client built in, like the Xbox One or PlayStation 4. So you talk about how furious you're getting. We could see in real time Noah's anger building up, and then see him come onto the show right afterward, and see how he cools off and plays it all off here for us on the NS show.
That's
Well,
funny.
it's great to hear that. I'm excited to hear that you're going to continue pushing on. I hope it leads to more joy than anger, but I definitely can understand your criticisms against it, even though it's one of my favorite games for the Wii U, but I definitely understand where you're coming from. For me, I've been spending time with my 3DS over the past week. I've been playing Siesta Fiesta, which we talked about last week. I will be reviewing in the next issue of NF Magazine, so you can look for a full critique of it there. But I will say it's very delightful. It's very charming. It has a really good musical soundtrack. It's a limited soundtrack so far, but it's just something that just you kind of get into and you spend a little time. And if you're wondering what Siesta Fiesta is, it's kind of like a breakout game in a lot of ways, but you're scrolling in most of the levels from left to right as you're breaking blocks or other types of devices. And the developer, I think it's Mojo Bones is the name of the developer. They do a lot to mix things up. I'd say I'm about halfway through. They have it broken out in a very platformer traditional style of 8 levels and individual levels throughout that. And in general, I've just been finding myself having a good time, and it has gotten to the point where if I'm playing late at night, I will be like, oh, I'll just play one more level. I'll just play one more level, and those 2-minute stages start to add up where I miss my bedtime by a considerable amount. So I think that's always a good telltale sign of a fun game.
That is a game that I'm definitely wanting to try out. I love simple arcade games from the 80s revisited in this way. We've seen it with Galaga and with Pac-Man as examples, and Space Invaders from the, I think from the DS and also from the 3DS years. We've seen those titles on there, and it's really cool to see a twist on a classic gameplay concept with a neat little theme. And so, yeah, this seems like it's right up my alley. I'm looking forward to seeing what your final review says, Evan.
Oh yeah, and I unless like things just totally go downhill halfway through, which I don't expect. I feel like they've done a good job. There's boss battles. They try to mix up the stages. They just add little twists that so far I've found fun. Have mixed it up enough because I mean, Noah, how many breakout like games have there been over the past 20 or 25
Oh,
years?
yeah.
So you have to bring something new to the table on top of just nailing those mechanics, and I feel like they do a good job of that. My only criticisms I would say early on, and the biggest one, and this is a problem with I feel like not only 3DS games but Wii U, is there's no online leaderboards for scores. So one cool thing would have been because there is a score based, and you can earn medals, so they give you a reason to go back, bronze through gold's medals, and the little scoring bars on the bottom screen. But to even add on top of that incentive to go back would be seeing how your friend scored right there on the list to give you another reason to say, hey, I'm going to try that level again. And it's something that we've kind of been going on and on about over the past few weeks, whether it's with us or if we have Don on the show. But it's just unfortunate we don't see those types of features in 3DS or Wii U games, and it's not very often when we do. The only 3DS games I can think of are that I have that do that are Marvel Pinball 3D, which is really cool, and then also Escape Vector by No Studios, based out in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
But that is all for my Siesta Fiesta thoughts. If you've been playing Siesta Fiesta, I'd love to hear what you think about the game, or if you've been playing any of the games we're playing or something different. We'd love to hear from you. You can email us at show@nfmagazine.com, or you can also leave a comment right here on our YouTube page if you're watching us live or if you're watching us after the fact. We'd love to hear what you have to say and what you're playing. But with that, let's get into the main topic for this week's show, and that is something that doesn't happen very often, a huge Nintendo leak. I feel like these things happen to Ubisoft or Activision with the Assassin's Creed franchise or the Call of Duty franchise, but with Nintendo, things usually keep pretty locked and sealed and under wraps.
Oh yeah.
This hasn't been the case with today. We saw video footage that is basically Nintendo hasn't confirmed it. They said they have nothing to announce, but we saw video footage that looked 100% legit of new characters coming to the 3DS and Wii U versions, although the footage was from the 3DS game, and it confirmed some characters. One in particular, I heard rumor, but I didn't believe it at all. Shulk from Xenoblade Chronicles will be in the new Super Smash Bros.
Yeah.
Game.
And that is a
That,
character that a lot of people have asked for or wished for.
which I get that Xenoblade Chronicles was loved, but it obviously didn't come out until much later in North America. He's this character only has appeared in one game, and there's so many characters throughout the history of Nintendo's franchises. So it was pretty shocking to me that he ended up being included as a playable fighter.
Something that kind of surprised me about his inclusion as well is that he's just another guy running around with a sword. And how many of those characters does Smash Brothers have? We have Zelda, we have Ganondorf, we have 3 Fire Emblem characters, and now potentially Shulk. Meta Knight has a sword. There are lots of characters with swords, and it's kind of monotonous at the end of the day. Granted, they don't all do the exact same things, but it's kind of surprising that uh, I think that's the biggest surprise for me is that we have yet another sword character in there. I'm sure that if he is in there, that he's got some cool moves and stuff, but it's kind of boring. I would rather see something more creative or abstract like Wario or the Wii Fit Trainer or Animal Crossing, just something that you wouldn't see as a fighter, because for me that was the original crazy appeal of Smash Brothers, was seeing characters who don't run through their games fighting. They don't run through their games with guns or with swords or with some kind of weapon, and here they are in this battle royale trying to knock each other out of arenas. When you see somebody running around with a sword, it's kind of cool. There's some fan service to it, but it's not necessarily that creative or interesting.
Well, you brought up two things I want to bring up. You brought up Ganondorf, who was also basically confirmed from this leak, but he actually doesn't use a sword. He's the one instance where they take the sword away from him in the Super
Yeah,
Smash Bros. Games. And unfortunately, people were a little disappointed just reading around the web because it looks like Ganondorf will be kind of a clone or replica of Captain Falcon. So that's why people are a little upset. He's going to have kind of the same moveset. So it's one of those instances where I like the dichotomy here of you wanting people without swords, and I know a lot of people were like, where is Ganondorf's sword? Which was funny, but I definitely agree that the Shulk, I guess it makes sense because I'm guessing they have Sakurai and his team. You have a lot of ideas because there are so many sword-based characters, and maybe that makes it easier to implement him than someone that is a little weirder out there.
yeah.
But on the flip side, the one that shocked me and that does look to play just totally differently is Bowser Jr., who will be making his Super Smash Bros. Debut, because Bowser Jr. gets around in the Koopa Clown Car. And if you're wondering what is the Koopa Clown Car, that is what Bowser actually used, and it debuted in Super Mario World. So with the like little clown face on it and stuff. So they showed Bowser Jr. in some of his like B sideways and stuff, and one of them has the Bowser car shooting a cannonball out of its mouth, and then another one has a tongue coming out of the mouth of the Koopa clown car and licking enemies. On
Eh,
top of what looks like a beat up move where basically like a robotic arms with boxing gloves on it kind of does like the spin moves, and it's kind of like hopping around. It's not gliding so much, but it just looks totally ridiculous and totally odd and something I would have never expected.
I really like that, and I remember when at first this leak manifested as static screenshots of the character selection screen, and of course the reaction was, these are a dime a dozen. People, it's so easy to make these fake screens. And oh my gosh, look at Bowser Jr. You can see they just cropped the art from somewhere, and he's still in the little clown vehicle. Because I feel weird calling it a car because it's not even on wheels. It's kind of like a reverse helicopter with the propeller underneath it, as I recall.
Mm-hmm.
But people were criticizing and say, look, he's in a vehicle. They did such a hack job on creating this character select screen, and yet in the video that we've seen, there he is on this little hovering piece of transportation. Hearing the description kind of reminds me of how Tron Bun was implemented in Marvel vs. Capcom. If you ever played that, she's a character who runs around in a giant robot and has all these abilities that are based on the robot, which is kind of cool. I like that. That's a nice twist. That's some kind of refreshing, unexpected element to add to the Smash roster. And if it is real, and it looks like it is, that's cool.
Oh yeah, this was an exciting for Nintendo, probably not exciting, but for all the fans, I think the Bowser Jr. and the Koopa Clown Car and Shulk from Xenoblade Chronicles, because you got to remember, we're only 2 weeks away from the Japanese release. I think it's like in September. So you kind of thought like there weren't too many new characters they were going to reveal. I think the roster list is up to around the 35 character mark already anyway. So to see there's 3 new characters coming, and 2 of them are newcomers, and one of them is outrageous. Was just kind of like one of those mind-exploding experiences. But it also, on top of that, led credence to you were talking about the character images of another character that people thought was ridiculous at the onset. And we haven't seen footage of this, but it does sound like this character will be playable, and this will please Noah, the Duck Hunt Dog.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm talking about. How weird is that?
How is that
How
going
does that
to
even work? I can't even get my head around the idea of how would you attack the Duck Hunt Dog. That's a trophy character. That's an assist character. It's not a fighting character, but if it's in there, that could be really cool.
Duck Hunt Dog could end up being the biggest troll character in Super Smash Brothers ever, especially if you can have the dog do his little laughter thing. That'll just drive people insane.
Oh yeah. I know that if that character's in there, that is going to be probably one of the very first things that I try. I have to play as the Duck Hunt Dog, or if I have to unlock that character, that will be the first thing that I'm trying to focus on unlocking.
Yep. And once again, we didn't get footage for these other characters, but this has all led further credence to this massive leak that other characters that will be featured in the game that haven't been announced yet include Wario, Dark Pit, Dr. Mario, and much more. There's even some rumors popping up about DLC coming in the future. And then finally, even on top of that, there was a screenshot leak that happened on Imager that looks like it's the final version of the game. Possibly someone testing the game for NOA, possibly, or they're having external teams test it because it's such a huge game. I can't imagine what goes into testing all these trophies popping up and all these characters battling. But we saw a bunch of different trophies and all of these different talks about the spectating mode and stuff like that. There's just a lot of information all spilled out over the past week, and especially with the videos today.
And you have to imagine that if these are legitimate and this has been totally spoiled on the internet, Sakurai has to be so upset and so angry because, after all, his primary reason that he cited for removing the Space Emissary mode was they put all this work into these cool cinematics to help move the story along in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and then they were all put up on YouTube, and he thought that that was so disenfranchising, so disheartening, and it just ruined the whole experience. And so obviously, surprises, announcements, he does them very well. The Nintendo Directs are really exciting to watch when Sakurai's involved. And if this has all been ruined, he must be really upset. And I don't blame him. I really don't, if he is.
Well, I put Sakurai up there with Hideo Kojima at just being in a class all their own, like you said, of the reveals and surprises. I can understand if he's ticked off, but I feel like you're so close to the release of the game, and maybe some of these they were just going to be like, let the fans discover them in the game and reveal them or whatever. But I hope Nintendo, they look at this and say, you know what, this doesn't hurt the game at all. This isn't going to impact sales. People are excited about this. People aren't upset with the game at all. I just hope that they can use this and try to have fun with what happened and maybe joke that no one expected them coming. Do something playful, and if anyone at Nintendo could do it, it'd be Sakurai, and try to use this as a silver lining to really get people even more hyped up as we get into the last few months. Because for me, this whole deluge of information has got me more excited because I love Super Smash Brothers, but the drip feed sometimes just gets to me.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, let's do this all this, especially when I'm someone who the Smash Brothers dojo for Brawl for more than a year or whatever, every day woke up and was like, what's here, what's here, what's here, when it was really ridiculous. He'd unveil items and all this stuff every day. So once you've been through this a couple of times, it gets to the point where you're just like, I just want the game to come out. But this got me really excited, and I still don't know if I'm going to pick up the 3DS version because I'm more excited about the Wii U version. But seeing all this footage on the 3DS, it looks really good, and I can't be more hyped right now.
I am right there with you. And I, yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that.
Your hype, I can see the hype. Noah, don't get too excited. We'll have to hold you back.
Well, I guess I do remember the one other thing I wanted to say. If there really were, if there really is this much information still to be revealed, with only 2 or 3 months left before the release of the game,
2 or 3 weeks.
like they withheld too much. Like there are games that at this point they only have a couple characters left to show off, and they space those out a couple weeks apart, and then it's kind of focus on pre-order bonuses or marketing or whatever. This much content still yet to be revealed. It's just like, wow, you could have said a lot more at E3. We could have had several more Nintendo Directs or something if we were even going to drip feed it. But hey, I'm definitely happy to go in informed. I don't necessarily need to be surprised in terms of what characters are included in a fighting game.
Yeah, and Sakurai, I feel like every time he's like, I'm gonna rein everything in a bit. I can't do this to myself. I like can't throw all this content in the game. I need to streamline it. And then here we are once again, like you said, just so much content. Whether you liked his games like Kid Icarus Uprising or anything like that, you just have to respect him for how much he packs into a title. You never feel like you didn't get your money's worth because it's just ridiculous everything you could do with it. But speaking of lots of content, especially excellent content, we have once again some great feedback from you, our listeners, our viewers. So excited to go through it. Remember, you can email us at show@nrfmagazine.com, or you can leave a comment on YouTube. And with that, I'll let Noah take it away.
Thank you, Evan. First up, we're going to get into the emails, and our first one comes courtesy of Andy Lapp. Andy Lapp wrote in, I saw the news about Pokemon on iPad the past week. At first, I didn't even look at the article, but then I realized the potential of the game. Although I can see the potential, too bad they didn't release it on Wii U first, like Don said. Is that Nintendo putting online functionality behind again? I also saw the Phoenix Wright game on the iPad as well as one of the best new games on the App Store. That's how the Phoenix Wright game was labeled on the App Store. Any thoughts on that? Well, for me, as a hardcore Phoenix Wright fan, and I just want the Phoenix Wright fandom to thrive and grow, any type of promotion like this is well deserved, first of all, because those games are fantastic. Granted, I haven't played the iPad version. And if it increases the fan base and that means we get more Phoenix Wright games, I'm all for it. Evan?
Yeah, and that's the Dual Destiny games that's available on iPad, right? That they're offering now that came to 3DS first last year.
I think so if it's not the HD Trilogy re-release.
No, I think that's still yet to come this year. I think it's Dual Destinies, and I'm all about them expanding the user base, but I think the release on iPad just points to some of the issues that Nintendo has. He brought up online earlier. This points out some of the problems with the online stores in Nintendo and the eShop, because I think it's only $15 on the iPad and you get the first full case free as like a playable demo where your progress carries over. And I think that game's still probably $30 on the eShop. So that's one area that Nintendo needs to get more competitive.
Andy's email continues, I've seen the reviews on Siesta Fiesta. The gameplay looks really cool and nice. I look forward to seeing Evan's review on it next issue. By the way, Hyrule Warriors issue, that looks awesome! I think the impressions of Hyrule Warriors from everyone, including Don, is starting to make me change my mind. Have you changed your mind on Hyrule Warriors?
I think it looks really cool. I've watched some gameplay footage around the web. It all looks really great, but it's every time I look at it, it's a game I want to play with someone, and preferably someone like you know. It'd be a really and
Oh,
and that just like gets me angry that I wouldn't be able to play that unless we
Yep.
flew across the country or whatever. So I still feel like if I get it, I will pick it up later when the game's cheaper or maybe early next year or whatever. I don't see myself getting it upon release.
That makes sense. I'm still not in the completely sold camp along with Evan. Andy's email wraps up. I've been playing Rayman Origins the past week. I was craving RPG games, so I also played Mario and Luigi Dream Team, which I don't know where you're at, Andy, in that game, but it just goes on and on and on and on. He continues, I downloaded the demo of Bravely Default, and I think I'm putting it on my wish list. All right, no, that's a good one. That's another really long RPG game. So if you're looking for RPGs, Andy, that are really long, both of those will satiate you potentially to want to play another genre. But I'm interested in hearing what you think of those games. Next up from Tear. Tear wrote in, Pokemon games on iOS? What about Android? Either way, I don't play games often on mobiles. So, man, yes. Tear definitely plays a lot of games, so I like the additional caveats put out there one after another. Tear continues, I used to play the Pokemon card game back in the 90s when it was good, but I haven't touched it in ages and don't really care about it anymore. As for the new 3DS thing, well, I have a red and black 3DS XL and previously a red 3DS. I have no desire to get another one, and limited editions are way too expensive over here in England, so I never get them. Tear continues, I really want to play Hyrule Warriors 2. I love Dynasty Warriors and most games like it, like Sengoku Bazara, and I'm looking forward to playing Hyrule Warriors one day. Hopefully it won't be too long, but the price of the system isn't going down anytime soon. Yes, listeners, if you or watchers, if you're reading between the lines, Terra does not have a Wii U, which is shameful.
Shame, shame.
Terra continues. Note I loved Stealth Incorporated and I'm really looking forward to the sequel, but I like the mission-based format and not too keen on the whole open world thing for that game. So then, top 8 GameCube games with 2 honorable mentions. Terry, you're a person after my own heart. I'm always all about squeezing in extra. But not in any order of best or worst. I can't make that kind of decision. So here's Terry's list. Resident Evil 4, Killer 7, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, Beyond Good and Evil, Tales of Symphonia, Metroid Prime, The Legend of Zelda, Wind Waker, Eternal Darkness, and those two honorable mentions are Fire Emblem Path of Radiance and Beautiful Joe. There were so many good GameCube games that I know I've left out. It's not that I don't like them, I just had to pick some, and these were required for listing. Great show as always, guys. Thank you very much, Tara, for writing in another wonderful email, and I definitely feel your pain and coming up with these lists because I usually have an honorable mentions list that's 5, sometimes 10 long. It's just like, oh, I really, really, really have to pick the best of the best, and it's hard. And that's cool because it means we had a lot of really great options. And that's true for almost every Nintendo system except for Virtual Boy.
Yeah, I was gonna say I just love the inclusion that Tara had of Tales of Symphonia. That was definitely one of my favorite GameCube games, and that was an exclusive originally, and was just an awesome talk about long RPGs. And I don't think any of us brought it up last week.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Maybe Don, but I don't think it came up. All right, into the comments section. Eric R. wrote in, hey, Evan and Noah, as usual, a great show. It's always fun listening to during the lunch breaks. Thanks. Thank you for listening to us. As for the whole Wii U name thing, I can't imagine the name alone hurt the console sales, but I'm sure it didn't help. I still remember when Reggie first announced the name, and I was more dumbfounded than when they announced the Wii. I got over it pretty quickly, but man, that was a moment. Moving past that, though, I wanted to ask if either of you have a gaming backlog problem. Personally, I have a major problem on my hands. I probably have 20 or so games that I haven't finished, with 3 of them I've yet to even play. I have to admit, it's kind of overwhelming and makes it always so hard to choose what I should play on a given day. Granted, now that I have a full-time job, I suppose this is bound to happen, but
Mm-hmm.
I'd ask if either of you have this problem and if you have any tips for conquering the gaming mountain that is a backlog. Evan, I know that you have a strategy of sorts.
Over the past couple of years, my strategy has been to basically just play one game until it's completed. Maybe mix it up with 2. Maybe stick to one game per platform, but that can add up if you have a lot of different systems. But my thing would be to not stress about your backlog. If you feel like you're overwhelmed, you're just never going to be able to play every single game that comes out, possibly in your backlog too. And I would say you could get rid of those, or just if you like collecting, put them on a shelf or whatever, and just focus on what you want to play. But it's something that I feel like it happened to me as I got older and got a full-time job, and probably the same for you, Noah. If you can support that and do that, I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with it. Um, but yeah, as for tackling, I would say maybe just make up a rule that you can't buy any new games until you complete one of those backlog games, something like that. I think there's a lot of strategies that you could use to get through it, or take all those backlog games, trade them into something you want to get here in the upcoming future, and start fresh.
Hmm. I'm going to have to agree with Evan. The only time that I've really been successful at finishing a game is when I focus on one game at a time. My problem, especially with a game like Mario and Luigi Dream Team, perfect example. Game that goes on forever. It goes on so long that other games that I really, really am excited about and can't wait to play, they come out while I'm still trying to finish Mario and Luigi, and then Mario and Luigi gets put aside, never to be touched again, which has been the case for probably 9 months now. I think that's been not since December or November that I've played it. And I don't really regret it too much because it was starting to become a little bit of a slog. But I have, like the Mass Effect games as an example, I got through all three of those in a row. And the way that I did it was I only played those games over a period of a month or two. And I loved it. It was great. And that, I guess, was a special scenario because I loved those games so much that it was really easy for me to keep playing and keep playing and keep playing. But if a game doesn't really, really grab you, it can be difficult, like Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, to force yourself to get through it. Oh, Super Mario 3D Land, the Mario Death March game. That's a game that I have not completed ultimately because if I committed to this arbitrary rule, I must finish it, I probably would have gotten through the second quest, but it just started to really stink and
Yeah.
not be that much fun. And I think that's when Evan's other suggestion really becomes a good idea. Don't let it clutter your shelf or your life. Get rid of it, move on, and find a game that really clicks with you, that you're happy to focus on just by itself and get through.
Yeah, and real quick, like Noah said, if a game didn't click with you and you're like trying to force yourself to go back, you may not like that game. You may acknowledge it's well done, but that's just not the game for you. And I think that's totally acceptable. I think a lot of people are like, oh, everyone says it's good. You're not going to like every single game that everyone else likes, even if you can acknowledge it's well produced or whatever.
And Evan is subliminally saying Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze over and over.
No, I didn't mean that to you. I'm just saying we all have different taste. I feel like a lot of people are like, "Oh, everyone says it's a good game. I can tell it's a good game. Maybe you just don't like it." Not you specifically, Noah. I know you think everything revolves around you here, but I'm talking in general.
Only when I'm looking at you on my computer screen do I think you're talking to me. All right. Going forward to Kisaki Project. Kisaki Project wrote in, I want the Smash Brothers 3DS XL. It looks awesome, but I can't justify replacing my OG 3DS. Oh, come on, Kisaki Project. If you're using that small 3DS without the beautiful larger screens that actually do not compromise the visual quality, which was my main concern, you can definitely justify this upgrade, in my opinion. Evan's just going to laugh.
Yeah.
I'll continue reading. It looks awesome. Kisaki Project wrote, but I can't justify replacing my OG 3DS. I also really enjoyed his Affordable Space Adventures preview.
Talking about Dawn.
Yes. Kisaki Project says, so I finally got Fire Emblem Awakening. I've never been into the series due to permadeath, which is weird because I beat Valkyria Chronicles 1 and 2 without losing anyone. But I decided to jump on the Fire Emblem bandwagon, and I've gotten through the first 6 chapters on baby mode, and I really like it. I've been missing out. The strategy is really fun, and the presentation is epic. Plus, I love medieval political intrigue. I'm glad I finally gave this series a try. Someone close to me has been in the hospital a lot, on and off this year, So that's when I played Bravely Default early. 3DS RPGs are good for playing while sitting next to someone's hospital bed. I hope Fire Emblem can do the same. Kisaki Project.
Thanks for sharing that personal story, and I'm glad it's always interesting and cool to hear about how games can help people get through some of the through the best times in your life, but also t- not terrible, but the worst time, not the very worst times, but just down times in your life. How they can help you kind of carry through those harder moments that you encounter.
And also, Kisaki Project, don't feel bad about what you called baby mode, because when the series director and creator can say, I was kind of against putting this mode into the game because it's a compromise of all the Fire Emblem games that came before it. But now that it's in there, I think I'm going to play in that mode as well. I think that says everything. When the creator of the game, the director of the game and the series says, all right, it seemed like a bad idea. It was a really tough decision to compromise those Fire Emblem permadeath values, but now I think I'm going to use that mode as well. That is all the justification you need for playing in baby mode, and I think I'm actually going to go back and play baby mode Fire Emblem. I don't know. We'll see. I'll have to keep you posted because something else has to come up after Kirby, and really what it should be is Professor Layton and the Miracle Mask. I should finish that because I have the other game after that. And apparently I like Professor Layton, but I can't get through the games anymore. It'll probably be that, but then I will come back around to Fire Emblem Baby Mode, and I can tell you what you think. Tell you what I think, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you think of the rest of the game. I'm glad to hear that you finally jumped on because I don't know if this is true for Evan. I think Evan played a previous Fire Emblem game, but for me, it was my first one, and I was really happy that I finally got into it, even though I was trying to play in what I call flawless victory mode, where nobody dies. That is easier said than done. Lots of restarts if you do that. So think of all the time you're saving, Kisaki Project, by playing in baby mode, and how much further you will get through the game and how much faster. There's not something bad to be said about that. Next comment from Nintendo Dude GCN. In regards to what Noah was saying about hitting the wall when gaming after a certain period of time, I can certainly empathize. I have certainly hit the wall when playing more difficult games before, such as Super Mario 3D World, Tropical Freeze, and most recently, the mysterious Murasame Castle. For me, I think it has to do with mental fatigue. I'll often start getting frustrated and impatient at these points, which in turn cause me to make more mistakes, causing a vicious cycle of building frustration. Nintendo Dude, you completely summed up my Donkey Kong sessions. Oftentimes, I find that giving the game a break for a short period of time really helps. Sometimes, if it's a really difficult portion that I've been struggling with for a few days, I've been known to put the game down for a week or two. Sometimes all I needed is to clear my mind of the struggle, play something else in its place for a while, and come back to it completely refreshed. Also want to say thanks to Don for the Hyrule Warriors impressions. Just from watching you share your thoughts, it's obvious that you really enjoy this game, and it's made me that much more excited for its release next month. Nintendo Do GCM. Evan?
Oh, just thanks for the great feedback. And I definitely agree. The mental fatigue gets to me sometimes. It's not that you can't do it, it just kind of gets in your head and you get really furious about those certain little points.
Yeah, there was a level I was playing with Rambi the Rhino earlier this evening, and my
Ah,
first try
Ramby.
where I died was a little bit later along, and then I started making more and more mistakes and dying earlier and earlier, and not even getting as far as I first did in my very first try. And I was just being told so bluntly, it was like this stick was being hit on my head every time that I played, that I was getting sloppier and sloppier as my emotions got the better of me, and I really need to find my Yoda Zen state and just get through it. And I think I finally did find it once I got past the furthest that I've ever did. I'm like, okay, I'm really concentrating, I'm really focusing, I'm calm, I'm gonna get through this, and I did. Thank goodness. Or actually, I just got to the next checkpoint, and then I died right after that. But oh my goodness, that I got to that checkpoint, it was worth it. Next comment, Lucas W. I have a few comments in the past few episodes. Noah, Donkey Kong never gets easier and only gets more frustrating. Smiley face. Thanks. I quit playing after about level 4, so yes. Because it became tedious with too much trial and error. Music is great, though. All right, thank you, Lucas. I'm glad to hear that we're on the same page. Level 4. I don't know if he means World 4 or
I think he
Local
means
4.
World 4.
Okay, good. Well, in the least, Lucas, I will try to catch up with where you got, if I can survive that long. He continues, Mario Kart 8 Online equals horrid. It works, but playing with friends is difficult and the ranking system is terrible. Thank you, Nintendo, for giving me points for coming in ninth place, but I do not want it.
I love that. I
That's pretty
reject
funny.
your points.
I can't even race friends' ghosts on time trials, which was one of my favorite features of Mario Kart Wii, which Evan and I went back and forth on a ton. I pray Smash is better.
So yeah, I looked. Lucas is one of my really good friends from home, and I looked into this about Mario Kart 8, and you apparently to have be able to race against your friends time trials, you have to upload it to Miiverse. And then I've heard even then there can be issues with racing against them, which is a huge step back from the previous one, Mario Kart Wii, where it would just upload and you could see whatever friends had raced that track and decide to race against them. So that Nintendo basically took a huge step backwards for this game just makes me furious. Just it totally ruined. I mean, it honestly, I spent hours and hours with Ghost Mario Kart Wii, and it just ruined part of the game that I really loved. I just don't understand it.
I think the most difficult functionality and design decisions to deal with are those that are taken away from one sequel to the next, such as what Evan's talking about, and for me in Mario Kart 8, changing Balloon Battle. Just leave the mechanics in, leave the design in, make it easy on yourselves, make it easy for people who expect the tradition after decades of Mario Kart games. Don't change it. Don't take steps backwards. And we've seen this on other console systems as well. Xbox has had these issues, PlayStation's had these issues with basic functionality. And when you have a cherished franchise of games, something that seems like it's easier to execute on and to maintain design decisions, it's even more painful. But Lucas has more comments, so I will continue reading. The Wii U name is a good concept, but failed terribly. Wii was meant for everyone playing together, and then Wii U was meant for you, the gamer. That's what I'm guessing anyway. Do you all think there is any way the Wii U can come back from this, or will it be stuck as a first-party and indie system for the rest of its days? Even if Smash Brothers sold 10 million systems, I don't think third parties would jump back on.
Yeah, and we talked about this with Ubisoft earlier about Assassin's Creed, but I have thought this for the past year and a half or whatever. Third parties are just done. You're gonna get Skylanders and Disney Infinity, but if you're looking at a Wii U from a third party standpoint, it's never gonna get better. Super Smash Brothers is not gonna change anything, and Nintendo in the future, a new console is not gonna change anything either. Nintendo has a long road back to recovery to get any kind of third party support that's even adequate at this point, which is sad, but I mean, Nintendo's first party is great, and hopefully indies can help fill in some of that void, which they're already doing.
Yeah, I think there are two ways back to third-party acceptance, and they both involve new systems. And one system option is one that's so similar in specs and design as Sony and Microsoft's that it's really easy to port games to, which is very anticlimactic and disappointing for people who are longtime Nintendo fans and expect something creative and innovative. The other path back to third-party relations, I would think, would be the Wii strategy, where you come up with something so crazy and so popular around the world that third parties have no choice but to try to hop on the bandwagon and put stuff out. Although with Wii, we saw a lot of games that just didn't really hit the mark. And so I feel like there is a double-edged sword with third-party support. We definitely want to see the highest quality, their AAA work, or double A even, or even single A, put onto the system, but sometimes you just get Just Dance. You just have to take it.
I like Just Dance, to be
You do?
fair.
Yep.
Yeah, I do.
Dancer? Dancing
I've
Machine?
I've played the 2014 edition. I played one of the recent editions for Wii U with my niece, and it's a lot of fun. I had never like put too much time into it, but I think they're really fun games, and then they're funny. So yeah,
Yeah.
Don't hate. Don't hate on Just Dance, Noah.
Far be it from me to critique the music genre because I have lots of rhythm and music games in my library. So I'm not dismissing rhythm games.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I know that a lot of people out
Uh-huh.
there who are about Assassin's Creed probably don't overlap a lot with the Just Dance audience
Yeah.
demographic. I'm sure there is overlap, but I bet there is definitely a healthy amount of mutual exclusivity between those two demographic audiences. But who knows? Dart the Baden, 86, wrote our next comment. In order to appreciate LA, you really have to branch out and explore the city. LA is a beautiful city, Don. It's more than just the downtown area. Sorry, as an LA native, I just felt compelled to defend my city. Anyway, sorry for that rant, guys. Great show, and keep up the good work. Thank you, Dartha, for standing up for your city. I knew that once that conversation or that line of dialogue started, it was just like, we shouldn't be saying this because there has to be someone in the vast metropolis of Los Angeles listening that's gonna be like, what the heck are you saying about my city? So point taken, and I have not seen enough of the city to, unless you count LA Noir, which is or Grand Theft Auto 5. That's really all I've seen of the city. That's beyond what I've seen in real life. Not an accurate representation, and I'm sure there is as much to love as there is in every city. Every city has fancy parts and parts that aren't so fancy and fun to be in. And thank you for sticking up for where you live in, Dartha. Last comment is from Old School 1990s. I often reach a plateau in gaming. It could be a combination of mental fatigue, boredom, and the inescapable notion that I have other responsibilities, quote unquote, being 33 years old. You and me both, Old School 1990s. I don't think that Evan's ever going to reach that age before I die. He's so young. Look at him. He's so youthful. Old School 1990s continues. Also, I think some games are just better suited to a drawn-out grind, where others might be better in bite-sized portions. If I get stuck in a game, coming back with a fresh mind is usually a better option than just powering through it, in my opinion. Games should be fun, right? Exactly. Old School 1990s. They should be fun a majority of the time. There should definitely be challenges. There should be frustration points. But then you get past that, and you're like, all right, I'm going to have a stretch of stuff that I'm good at and that is fun and is enjoyable. And right now, the 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 cardiogram, I don't know what to call it, but it's like a little, the peaks being the difficulty and the anger moments, and the troughs being the, oh, this is nice, I'm having fun. For me, Donkey Kong Country, those lines, those peaks and valleys are really close together. And I'm hoping as I get used to the mechanics, the distances, the speeds, and everything, they will stretch out, and I'll be going through rolling valleys of pleasantness and utopia. And then just every once in a while go over a peak of challenge, like it should be. But we'll see. I really like the metaphor, though. That is all for our feedback. Thank you to everyone who took the time to write in either comments or emails. We definitely appreciate them. Once again, you can leave comments below this video player over on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/NF Magazine. That is our official channel. That's the ch sound I was trying to get to. And there's also email. If you want to be a little bit more exclusive on the feedback, you can send that into show@nfmagazine.com. Back to you, Evan.
Yes, thank you so much, Noah, and thank you out there for watching and viewing and for joining us here on the NF Show, NF Magazine's official video podcast. Don't forget, also at YouTube or YouTube, whatever you want to call it, however you want to pronounce it, you can also subscribe to us, and there's also an NF Show playlist that brings together all 32 episodes, so you can listen to more than 30 hours of Noah and I and our awesome guest talk about Nintendo news and Nintendo games. So if you got a long drive across country or a long flight, we've got you all set. Finally, you can subscribe to us and review us on iTunes. Please leave us a review. We always look those over, get better ideas how to improve the NF Show. And then finally, like I said earlier, you can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Evan Campbell. Noah's at This Is Noah. And most importantly, NF Magazine's Twitter account is at Nintendo Force. Don't forget about the cool double-sided Super Smash Bros. Poster we can all get if we can get 100 new subscribers. Be sure to check out the Kickstarter page for NF Magazine or go to nfmagazine.com where you can also find the audio version of this very podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on Leaks Everywhere. Super Smash Bros. Hype continues to build. Noah, I know you're excited. Let's see your excited face.
Yes, this is my excited face. Very excited for Smash.
But we're also a little angry that Professor Layton is still not
Yeah,
coming.
what's up with that?
Just to end, Professor Layton for life, forever.
Yeah.
But once again, that brings us to a close on episode 32. We'll be back next week with NF Show episode 33. Can't wait to see you until then. Bye now.
Bye-bye, everybody.